All right, welcome to the Voice of the Microsoft Partner. My name is Sherman Crancer. I'm the president of the Crancer Group. I want to say thank you so much for everyone coming today. In observance of Cybersecurity Month, we actually are running a session today. It's kind of the craziest cybersecurity incidents told by Microsoft partners. It may not be as crazy as I was kind of hoping for. I was kind of hoping for, oh my gosh, we have the catastrophe of the industrial, complex, and this is what we did. We chased somebody across the world. However, we do have some really awesome stories actually that are going to be coming here, and we've got some great speakers on here. We're going to introduce them in just a second. We're going to get right into it, because of just the length, we want to give everybody a chance to talk. Now, part of, we have over 400 attendees from the LinkedIn Live, which is amazing, unbelievable. Keep up the good work. Thanks for coming. And then we have, probably about 70 here coming from on the team site. So if you're on LinkedIn Live and you want to come into the team session, where you can actually interface and send chat messages and ask questions directly to the speakers that we have on today, please let us know. You can just send us a quick note or register. We have that next time on our next call. Next month, just want to throw this out here. We actually are doing Partner Roundtable, the new commerce experience, where we're actually going to really dig into this new thing that's coming out that's affecting everybody. It's going to be an amazing call. We're having a bunch of partners coming in, giving their thoughts, on how to attack it and strategies. So with that being said, let me just go ahead and click on, the agenda today. These are our featured cybersecurity stories. So we have Clayton Mock from Accountability. Clayton, if you want to just wave your hand and say hello.
Hello.
Right. Awesome. He's a CISO, and then we have a video from Bruce Ward, Vice President of Business Strategy from Peters and Associates. They're going to talk about a story where they, went into about actual, one of their customers that actually had an issue. Next, we have Mark Benton, who's on the line. Mark, do you want to just kind of wave and say hello?
Good afternoon.
He's the Director of Product Development for Systems Engineering, an amazing, managed Microsoft partner. They do just some amazing stuff up in the Atlantic Northeast, not Pacific, right? They're in Maine, okay? So that is as far as we can get right up there. And then we have a video from Ryan Tech, the president of Ryan McMillan. And then we also have another fantastic speaker here, Mike Battistella, the president of Solutions Cubed. Yes? Solutions. Yeah, okay. Okay. And then lastly, we actually have a story. We're going to emit a story of something that happened to us directly. That actually is coming from, Microsoft actually put out an article just recently that how the new targets today are actually managed service providers. It's those companies, remember that solar wind thing, because of how they have so much access to so many different clients. That is really the new target. And I think today the theme that we want to get out of this is to learn from our peers, learn from the best and brightest in the industry, but also take back some things that we might be implementing. There might be some strategies, a little different thing. That's why these things are always so important to come to, right? And then third, I think to just socialize what we can do with, Office 365 and some of the security products. But I want to hear from the audience as well. Please come to the chat window, throw in some stuff. We've got some polling here just to make it a little bit more, interactive. But if you have some questions or thoughts or even, strategy thinking, we love to see that. All right. So, we don't really want to go ahead and sell this thing. Let's get into, interviewing, our first attendee here, and that's really Clayton Mock. So Clayton, thank you so much for coming today. Would you mind just kind of introducing your role in your company, and then we'll get into the first question of the story.
Yes, absolutely. So my role at at Accountability, I have a couple different hats, as probably we all do, but I'm primarily responsible for our security practice, which is largely a blue team practice here at Accountability, deploying, configuring, monitoring, and consulting with customers on best practice and deployment of their, not only the security tool set, but also consulting on security hygiene, because, the tools are important, but also you got to have the right foundation in order to have a good approach to have a good door is only as good as the walls around it. You get what I mean?
Awesome, awesome, awesome. Thank you. And the other thing too is, your company is probably the number one Sentinel partner in the country. You really understand that. And there's a couple deals you and I have been working on, right? Especially the
Absolutely.
hospitals, right? And just amazing, how, like for hospitals, I didn't realize this, but one hospital had something like 5,000 endpoints, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're like, holy Moses, they're probably thinking, holy Moses too. Like, how do we
Right.
secure all that stuff?
Yep.
Um, so the first question is, do you have, a cyber, like a very interesting or crazy story that you'd like to share about a customer that had a breach or an event?
I
Kind of first and foremost.
Yeah, I do. So, and this is kind of a theme, and this is as far as for our practice, this is a big thing that we focus on. It's not just the deployment of the tool and like, hey, let's add an ounce of security, and we have a tool and we feel good now. We take a holistic approach to looking at the whole environment, making sure a customer is throughout their life cycle has an approach to security. And so the story I bring is unfortunately an organization. I think this will resonate with a lot of the attendees. Right, this organization grew rapidly through acquisition, and with each one of those acquisitions came a discrete set of IT assets that never quite got integrated. Right, they connected everything up, but never had the chance to go back and look at what they had actually inherited and then appropriately secure it. So they got ransomed, and they had a security deployment of sorts, but they had only deployed it to their keys of the kingdom, as it were. They only had it deployed in their data center, and they had all of these remote sites, had no monitoring or whatever. Fortunately, they had a pretty aware NOC analyst who started seeing some unusual behavior and reboots that it's like, well, hey, this is patching weekend, but this is running pretty late. And so they started escalating. They found they had been ransomed. So, and guess what had gotten ransomed? All the things that didn't have security monitoring on them. The customer was fortunately very lucky in that they did have remaining domain controllers. Like, I think because of that NOC analyst, they got saved in that they had time to shut down their perimeter because they had an unsecured VPN, which is the point of origin for a lot of these, right? Common theme there. And so they had launched their attack from there. So at that point, when they realized something was going on, they had reached out to us to assist with the investigation and remediation. We had them shut down all of their VPNs, isolate the environment. We also, some other things that were, when we initially got on the call, one of my first questions then was like, okay, have you who in your security incident response plan have you contacted? Have you contacted your legal counsel? Have you contacted your insurance company? Which is like absolutely step one. Have to get that ball rolling. You can't touch anything until you get your insurance engaged. And there was a long pause in the call, and the CIO came back and said, let's just assume we don't have a plan. So we were writing the plan right as we were responding there. So, and I spending the next 2 weeks assisting this customer recover from the event, got to know the guys, really understood the full story of how they got to where they were, which is grew rapidly through acquisition, right? They knew the right things to do. The business was like, just keep adding, just keep the services up. And so what ended up happening is they had all of these little discrete pockets that were unsecured, not well configured. One of the it's funny in a way, things that we found as we were cleaning up domain policy for them is like, hey, what's this policy here called deploy local administrator? And so what they had out in their group policy was a local administrator account sitting in sysvol deploying out to all of their workstations and servers, creating a local administrator account and sending in clear text, which can be read by anyone. So, they're often left, there's the question back from the business, well, how did this happen to us? The answer really was a resounding, how couldn't it have happened to you? How, there's so many possible ways this attacker came in, and then once they were in on the squishy inside, as it were, how they were able to privilege escalate and then dominate the network from there. It's very, it was really, felt a lot of sympathy for that team. They, from a business disruption standpoint, obviously hugely disruptive, having, file shares down. They were in a line of business that heavily depended on design documents. And so that was, all of that data being lost or unavailable was hugely impactful for them. Some of the other things, that's a real lesson to take away is, like, I know it sounds so basic, but seldom do organizations do it. Test your backups. Not only test your backups, but also fully understand your RTO, your recovery time objective. They had backups, and they actually did have them in an immutable location, so their data was there. Unfortunately, the volume of data that they had to download took the next week to download. So while they got systems back up, they didn't have the information that they needed in order to get the business restored and actually working again. And hopefully at some point we disengaged with them, and so I don't know how their total story ended. I hope somewhere their business started to listen to the IT team around, hey, we need to centralize things and need to have some time, have the right amount of staff to modernize the environment, bring things into a good baseline, divorce ourselves of old technology. We know old domains, they grow hair, and there's a lot of baggage that keeps getting carried forward, and we have to take the time to disable those things, basic things like old versions of NTLM, old versions of SMB. We're still seeing that out at organizations when we bring them on. It's like, you're still vulnerable to eternal blue, and so you gotta clean that stuff up. And then when you start looking and analyzing that, you find, well, that's a key protocol to this application that runs our finances, and these projects. Seems like a simple thing to approach, but it's hugely impactful.
Wow. And I mean, in your expert opinion, you're talking to a lot of different companies, all the time, right? And do you see a lot? I mean, just as your story, I would assume that a lot of the organizations you're talking to are in very similar boats. Would you say that is a pretty, a good assumption?
Yeah, there's, we get focused. I think as vendors and partners, we get focused on deploying the new tool without taking advantage of the basic things that we need to build a good environment and a good foundation for ourselves. And a lot of these things, Microsoft gives us all the guidance that we need and tools to identify these things, even without the tools. The tools, of course, help, but there's a lot of services and guidance provided by Microsoft that we just need to read, understand, digest, and apply these best practices in our environments that we're the caretakers of.
Wow. I know this is a little off-scope question, but I'm curious. What do you think? What percentage of your clients actually have a response plan, a security response plan in place that you talk to? Not your current clients, obviously, almost all of them have that. But
right.
When you're talking to prospects, what percentage of them don't even have a plan in place?
Usually, when we're getting engaged, they are starting out in their journey. Right, the business has made a commitment to do it. So at that point, that continuity plan is aspirational, but they're thinking about, they're starting to build that process. And so this is, we're getting engaged usually as a multi-pronged effort to bring some sanity or some security hygiene into the environment. They're in the process of building that. We're, of course, a big piece of that, being the first observers of any items and escalators of those services. So Generally speaking, I'd say, at that point, when we're getting engaged for a new customer, they have a blank sheet of paper and they're starting to write that process. But
That's
they
awesome.
recognize the need. Yeah.
That's awesome. Hey, thanks so much for sharing this story. And if you wouldn't mind, Clayton, we have some more discussion on here, and as we play some of these videos, we'd love to hear your thoughts, as well as there are going to be discussion inside of the chat window. If anyone has any questions for Clayton, but maybe about how he responds, or Sentinel, that's an amazing product and really cool stuff. Go ahead and ask him there. All right, thanks. That was really awesome. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get into Bruce Ward, VP of Business Technology out of Peters and Associates. They are a managed Microsoft partner, a monster in the Central region. And I'm going to go ahead and let's go ahead and listen to Bruce start with his story. Oh, sorry.
Sherman, we do not have sound right now.
All right, we're going to just redo this here with a little bit of sound. You guys like sound? I think you probably will. All right, let's try that again.
Story, but cybersecurity event with one of your customers. Would you mind kind of just going into that, that story and telling us what really happened, and then we'll ask you what did you do to remediate it, and then kind of what was the impact. So why don't we go ahead and kick this off?
Yeah, well, Sherman, I definitely have a crazy one for you from a partner perspective. We have a customer, ironically, that's been hit 3 times in the last 2 years, and so kind of organize some of the stories. I won't go into all the breaches that have occurred, but effectively, if you look at their first breach that occurred, it was back in July of 2020. They had a number of projects going on and had some new perimeter security that was being influenced by another partner. And they got hit with through a training account, executable called Payexe. And this was occurring A, while projects were going on, and B, they were unfolding some security plans. Their incident response plan was effectively non-existent. So we tried through various methods to kind of do a crude incident response plan based on ones that we've used with customers before, where we effectively help them prioritize their servers kind of on level 1 through 5, and then did some rebuilds, cleans, rollbacks for servers that were impacted. We're fortunate in that the training account had limited access, and not all the lateral movement had occurred to take over a really strong account. So there was a subset of servers that got impacted, but even with that, it was there was some significant cost involved in the recovery effort. They had to bring in some forensics to assist, as well as insurance and legal and some things of that nature. So certainly we had some recommendations coming out of that, but that was incident number 1. We'll talk more about the other incidents in the future, but the cycle is repetitive, and security plans need to unfold and unfold quickly. So as we kind of roll through that event from yesteryear, the problems that the CIO was kind of looking at was, here's your laundry list of recommendations, and ironically, this came from an outside provider. And these, are categorized in terms of 1 through 14 here, but you can imagine sub-bullets and sub-bullets where, there's 100 recommendations, let's say, at the end of the day. And that's what the CIO knows, is he's got a security problem. Where's the priorities? Where are the budgets, right? It was challenging to do that. And then along comes, we as partners certainly entertain the idea that M365, E3, or E5 solutions can be a great solution, right? And whether you blow it up even to big screen, it doesn't help with the fact that you got a lot of problems and a lot of solutions, and partners such as ourselves are designed to kind of mesh the two and make sure that there's good coordination and interaction between the two. So, we as an organization would be an advocate for some kind of phased approach. If you don't have an approach to security or priority or budget, we can certainly help you develop one. Crawl, walk, run is one mechanism to kind of think about things. You really need to do all these things, but we do know that this has to unfold over time. So, we tried very hard to organize some things into, to put some priorities around things, look for, the low-hanging fruit, make sure you're taking advantage of technology you already own, that might be easy to implement or easy to understand or have low user impact, things of those nature that might have the highest value in the beginning. So we tried to map these back to some of the original discoveries from the assessment and essentially unfold a plan. And so to kind of take it down one layer deeper, and I won't do this necessarily with all the areas, but for enterprise mobility, if you were trying to unfold, let's say, identity management, and this is where I'd pull out my little crayon here, identity management, you might start taking a look at what applications you're running out in the cloud, what users are accessing what applications outside of my firewalls. Then you might take some of those applications and try to leverage the identities to tie those into the applications that are out there using single sign-on. Furthermore, after kind of enveloping some of that, you might say, hey, some of those applications have some sensitive data, or there's some situations where I think multi-factor authentication is going to be a benefit to the security of that identity and therefore the application and data. But MFA might not be able to turn on for all applications at all times, so you're going to leverage things like conditional access, right, which is going to allow you to have some location parameters or application or grouping considerations when being asked to MFA or to block or to allow always some of those situations. And furthermore, you might even tie that in with what I call FICO scores, the risk-based conditional access. This is real-time scoring provided from Microsoft on, what is that identity's profile right now? Have they gone through password changes recently? Has the credentials been found on the dark web? Are they accessing sensitive applications often? Are there anomalous activities occurring with that identity? And factoring that into conditional access and further into the MFA capabilities. So identity management, might unfold as a plan similar to that. And then, and not all of these ideas are ideas that need to necessarily tie to Microsoft. Patching certainly can be done and enforced with Intune or Endpoint Configuration Manager, but doesn't have to be, right? It might be a server-based effort where, you're not going to put an Intune client or don't have the licensing potentially for endpoint, things of that nature. Firewall review, again, is often manual. There might be some tools, non-Microsoft tools or otherwise, to review it. But you might want to look at your server logs or your firewall logs and have those rolled into an aggregating SIM solution. We actually talk about that later in the run phase of things. Server modernization, I think in this particular case, there were some servers that were unpatchable, right, kind of end of life, and what's the plan for those, looking at the applications that are on there and determining whether those need to exist on-prem, where there might be some hardware dependencies, or can they indeed be moved to Azure, things of that nature. And last, email hygiene and safety, for which a lot of organizations actually own what used to be called ATP, and now is called Defender for Office 365. But that area is excellent for providing some of that zero-day protection for attachments coming in. So kind of a long-winded response to how a plan might unfold, but I kind of want to just dive in a little deeper to show you that things can be layered, priorities and budgets assigned, and then you can kind of go down to this level and help a customer understand how, at a tactical level, how this stuff might unfold. Hopefully that helps. This is an organization that also suffered a business email compromise, as some of the tools we just mentioned had not got unfolded yet. Things like anti-phishing, the safe attachments, and safe links capabilities of Defender for Office 365 were not in place, right? So unfortunately, a business email compromise happened, and we were fortunate in that detection occurred by a responsive customer of theirs. So sometimes it's not your own systems. If they're not doing detection, your customers will. So that's a situation, obviously, nobody would want. Monies aside, fortunately, they did not lose too much in that particular instance. But, plans continued, obviously, with walk packages. And again, I won't dive into detail here, but the walk was designed to solve some additional problems from a security perspective, as well as get them in line with what their third-party assessment had stated. So again, you'd kind of come back to the tools and you'd walk through, how can you get policy enforcement out of the tools that you own? Where can you get some detection capability, security training, as well as development of IRP plans. And DLP, which oftentimes is looking at some of the data that might be escaping your organization today. So the plan unfolds with walking. Unfortunately, during some of that time frame, they also get hit with additional ransomware, actually as of recent, which you can imagine at this point really kind of has the organization on edge, really supportive of security in depth. And, suddenly budget, authority, need, and timeline are all there, and you've got a BANT-qualified deployment of things. So we're actually still in the recovery phase for some of the ransomware, which is slowing down some of the security work. So, there's a dichotomy to this, but get your customers through the plans, right? Get the plans organized, show them the budgeting and priority, and ask them to kind of get things moving as quickly as possible. So,
Bruce,
really
thank you so much for coming on here and kind of sharing how you worked and also sharing how you attacked, no pun intended, but how you attacked the attacker. What did you do, right, to remediate it? We really do appreciate it. We're going to go ahead and we'll publish a slide to contact if anybody here on the platform is interested in just working with you. We have a lot of partners here that work in different types of industries and people that are in security. I could tell you, Peters is, in the top, they're what's called a managed partner for Microsoft. So they're in the top 4% of all Microsoft partners. They've been in business for quite a while, really something else. And this, Bruce, thank you so much.
No problem. Yeah, happy to be here, and just passed our 40-year mark for being in business, and happy to celebrate that, and certainly can be a resource for any of the customers out there, or customers or partners out there that might need assistance in this space.
All right. Let me go ahead and bring back up here. I think that was a pretty cool, just breakdown, right, of what we're going here. So our next guest speaker here, Mark Benton, Director of Product Development. We're really just excited to have him. Let me go ahead and stop the sharing here. So Mark, thanks again. You want to just kind of introduce yourself and your, and your company, just first and foremost, so people know who Systems is and who you are. And we'll get
Sure. So again, I'm Mark Benton. I'm Director of Product Management. Obviously, like someone said earlier, wear a few hats. Also manage all our contracts at the same time, which is fun. We've been around for closing in on 30 years, so not quite 35 or 40, but we've been around a long time. We were out of Portland, Maine, not Portland, Oregon. Have grown and are a good-sized MSP, a security-focused MSP, and do amazing business for being stuck up in Portland, Maine. I really wouldn't put it that way, but another thing that distinguishes us is that we are also 100% employee-owned, which really helps us keep, a highly engaged and motivated team. When we have to ruin someone's weekend, night, week, helping a customer recover after one of these events.
But that's it. You really have a strong MSP. And I think what's remarkable about your organization is that you are in Portland, Maine, but your reach is extensive, and it's blanketed too, which is really neat. We've been working together for about a year, within our group. So thanks so much for coming on here. And they work with partners too. So you guys call Mark. He always likes to learn from different things. I've had him, with different people. So, first question really is, from your perspective, what is a story that you would like to share? Cybersecurity, incident. And then next question will be, how did you resolve the breach? So why don't you go ahead and share the story that you had?
Yeah, a recent one was, it was interesting. It was basically a large organization, about 250 seats, large for us anyway, was transitioning from one MSP to ourselves. And they are still with the other MSP. We're starting to deploy our MDR tool the Friday afternoon before, what's on East Coast is a long weekend, Columbus Day weekend. And all of a sudden the alarm started going off around 5 p.m. our time. Now, I don't think the attackers knew that we were there. It was probably just because they knew a long weekend was coming. But we saw the attack start to happen. And, our stuff hadn't been out there long enough to stop anything. That's unfortunate. But, certainly this new customer was very surprised, very happy that we immediately told him, within, probably half an hour of seeing this activity start that, hey, you're getting attacked with ransomware right now. And of course, then it's really up to the lawyers, call your lawyer, call your insurance agency, let's get that process in place. Fortunately, they had decent backups and, have been able to recover. We had another similar incident in the healthcare space, a business associate, I think it may have happened a day before. They're right on top of each other, where again, this was someone who just really wasn't prepared. Again, these stories are going to start to sound all the same, right? They didn't have security awareness training, the basics. They didn't have security awareness training in place. Again, they were taken down hard. Luckily, we had good backups that were protected, but it's a long time to restore and recover all of that, especially for somebody who's in what I would consider a highly transactionalized and commoditized business. I hope they survive.
Wow. So I think you already kind of mentioned how you resolved, that first one, right? You kind of went back to the client. Do you have any other, thoughts of like, how do you, when a client has a breach, what are your typical responses, or how do you resolve? What are like the first things that you ask, or how do you approach it?
First thing I ask is, have you called your insurance company? Because we're going to do what they tell us to do, because we can't breach that relationship and their steps. We may shut things down, depending on which services they have with us, we might shut down ports on a firewall, or maybe tell someone to turn off a computer, but we're really trying to preserve evidence. That's really our number one step before. And then, and I think an important lesson learned is we're all anxious to solve the problem right away, but when you start working with the insurance and the lawyers and forensics, days don't matter to these people. And they're not wrong either. Step back, understand what's going on. You're in a bad place. We're going to get you to a good place eventually, but we need to get everything. We have to know what's going on, what the real threat is, how deep did they get. Then we can start the recovery. Preserve the evidence, get the evidence to the forensics folks, then we can talk about recovery.
So my next question, and I don't know if you have an answer to this one, but what percentage do you think customers have, or what percentage of customers that have security breaches actually have cybersecurity insurance?
We don't, so far, it seems to have been fairly good, and we've seen business insurance cover ransomware too.
Okay.
So it hasn't been, it's one of our goals is to figure that out across our customers and to tag those customers who have cyber insurance. Of course, we're always talking to customers about it, and now we're seeing the bigger carriers like Beasley and Travelers have very strict rules about having MFA. Travelers is the strictest, and you might not get a cyber insurance policy if you don't have MFA down to the local admin on a desktop, which is a good thing. Yeah. So we're doing a fair amount of education around that.
Okay, awesome. So Dave Siebert actually had a question. Dave, if you don't know Dave, or Seibert, excuse me, Dave, since I've known you, I've had that problem. But Dave runs SMB Tech Fest. If you haven't been to one of his events, just search for SMB Tech Fest. That's my plug for him. He doesn't even know I'm doing it, but I want to do it because it's awesome. He runs these events. Go there. It's a showcase for a lot of things. Really awesome. But he asked this question: does anybody have any comments? What third-party tools are being used for discovery and remediation of breaches? And actually, I'm going to ask Mike as well. Mark first, and then maybe we'll go to Mike.
I mean, yes, Sentinel-1 is a big one that comes up very often. That seems to be what many of the forensics folks lead with.
Mike, what do you think? You have any suggestions on that?
Yeah, I'm going to hold off on that one primarily because our role is up front. And when we get to that point, I bring in forensic specialists and let them do their thing.
Okay, very cool, very cool. That's a good answer. That's a really good answer. And actually, anybody who wants to go to SMB Tech Fest, there's a link now in the chat window. So awesome. So Mark, thanks so much. Really appreciate your thoughts here, and like to we're probably gonna have enough time to do a little bit more just. You, me, and Mike, and Clayton to kind of come together and ask a couple more questions here, just looking at the mode. So I'm gonna change it up a little bit. Actually, I want to go straight to Mike, if that's okay. We have another video that we'll play for Ryan Tech, but since Mike is on right here, we can kind of do a nice transition.
Sure.
Mike, you and I just recently spoke together, and I really appreciate what your service is or what you do, and I really wanted to make sure that we could highlight this within the partner community. Would you mind just introducing yourself and your company, what you do, and then we'll ask a couple of these questions.
Sure. So, it's funny because each of the speakers said, wear many hats. I wear a couple of different hats with two different companies. So I am the president of Solutions Cubed. We are focused in IT operations management, IT service management, that's the service desk and ITIL, as well as cybersecurity, more on the training side. I'm also the regional director for North America for cybersecurity professionals, and that's all around the NIST cybersecurity certification and training, and also doing assessments around the NIST framework, be it 853 or 171 or even ISO 27001. They have a whole program around that. So I find myself very busy. But really tied, our areas of specialty are going to be around, for security, are going to be around the training, which I wouldn't mind hitting a little bit on that, but also the governance, risk management, and compliance. We do assessments, but we do it in alignment with the NIST framework. And then, when we find those areas that remediation is needed and required, that's when we bring in our partners and things like that. A couple of highlights. I want to tell you the story, but I so appreciated the other speakers. Some of the highlights are really important, like testing your recovery. It's not good to test your recovery when you need to recover. So when you have a backup and recovery process, it's really good to test the recovery as much as you test the backup itself. Also, the fact that the supply chain is so important. Folks just totally miss the idea of the supply chain and the weak link in the supply chain. And part of the NIST framework or the NIST controls would say you need to be monitoring and managing your supply chain as well. So a couple of other interesting points that we'll make later on. So I'm going to guess, Sherman, I'm going to guess that the question you want to ask me is about a horror story, it being Halloween and such.
The cybersecurity month plus Halloween, give us something good that we can get, we can sink our teeth into.
Well, I thought it was really brave of you to say, hey, come on and tell us a horror story and not know what that story was going to be. So, kudos to you. So
it's live. I'm just telling you now, it's live. Right? We love to do it live because we're always on the edge.
All right. So, my story, I had so many stories going through my head that I could pull from, but, a couple of them, one of them I'm going to focus on. It was actually a small office, and I'll just say a small professional office. And you could kind of imagine what that might be. And we were just doing our standard, vulnerability assessment in alignment with the NIST controls. We get into the assessment. We're probably 3 days into the assessment, and what we found had us stop. So first, let me pause there for a minute. Anytime we're doing an assessment, especially for a small company that might be using an MSP, part of the assessment is to meet with the MSP. Want to find out what their security best practices are, and unfortunately, there's a number of MSPs out there that claim to be security focused, but that to them that means endpoint and firewall, not necessarily process, procedures, controls, and whatnot. So anyway, we're talking to, I don't want to say interviewing, we're talking to the MSP, and we find out that that this guy's incredible. I mean, he is incredible. And for your participants here, this is a story around not using the neighbor's kid, not using the son of a friend that you might know or maybe met down the street. You really want to work with a professional that's got a past performance, a history, credibility, certifications. You just want to deal with somebody reputable. So this was we're using a young guy. We met him through somebody else, blah, blah, blah. But this guy was incredible. He had two master's degrees. He had a PhD. He was on a first name basis with, jobs and these companies he worked at as a CIO and a CTO were amazing. I mean, it's just incredible, this guy. So obviously the red flags went up, right? So we start digging into things. What we found was so bad, we had to stop what we were doing. We were literally rebuilding our own laptops to bring into this company in case the FBI had to pull all their laptops out. Mm-hmm. So what this individual had actually done is put a Pi computer in the ceiling, tied into their wireless, and was collecting and storing data, not only company data, but pornography and child pornography and all that stuff. So we did bring in our forensics experts. We did find quite a bit. And interestingly enough, as we dug into this individual, we found out that he had been arrested for the things that I mentioned. There was no record of the employment that he had. There was no record of even attending the schools that he that he talked about attending. So you can imagine, one of the things that I've realized about myself, and I've led a number of incident response teams, is I immediately connect with the client. So Sherman, if you could see the look on your face right now, that's how I feel when I'm dealing with a client that goes through this. Because you totally relate to them and say, oh my God, what's going to happen here? So, you know what, we did all the right things. We immediately stopped what we were doing. We immediately brought in the legal representation. Good advice that came out on with one of the speakers today, that the first thing you do is you get that legal representation set up. You take care of the cyber insurance. And then you diagnose. And in this case, here's a good example. So we do the standard when it comes to cybersecurity, but when it comes to forensics, I want to bring in an expert. That's all they do is forensics, and they know how to do it. They know how to do it well. So, we went down that path and, brought resolution, and somebody was fired and a new MSP was brought in that had a reputation. But that was an interesting one. That was worth telling the story. Yeah, if I could, add to it though, a couple of things that were mentioned. The whole idea of the timeline, that is so critical. And the previous speaker, Mark, I think it was Mark, said, that they move so slowly. So I'll give you a great, for instance. I just was brought in to lead an incident response team on Wednesday of last week. It's now Friday of this week. We just got the client attorney privilege, all the agreements in place, and the permission to proceed. We've lost a week and a half, and so doing those things very quickly. It's important to not only have a response plan, advice to your listeners, it's important to have a response plan. If I were to put a percentage of how many have a response plan, I'd probably say, we're at 60-40, 40 have it, 60 don't. But what I find is even the ones that have it, they downloaded it from SANS or wherever they downloaded it from. They don't follow it. Nobody knows they have it. There are a handful that do. Maybe it's 10% that they actually have a response plan customized for them, that they do training for their organization, and they have somebody that they've designated as a head of the response team. Because it's one thing to have the plan, it's another thing to know how to execute on it. So anyway, I could go for another hour just on this topic, but I want to be sensitive to the audience here.
Well, I appreciate that, and thank you. That is a interesting story. Mark Benton actually asked a question. which did you find first, the Pi computer or the blank CVE for the guy, or maybe his police record? Which one did you find?
We actually found the police record first, and I credit my son-in-law for that, who's a cyber genius. He was very uncomfortable with some of the things that were being talked about, and so he did some investigation. Comes over to my house. It's like, Mike, you got to look at this. And once we found that, we knew that we had to dig in deeper than what we were just looking at.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Let me go ahead and Mike, thank you so much. I want to play one more video here, and then we'll come right back, okay? Just to make sure we have our other partner who came in and recorded something. But so just give me one second. That's it. We got about 7-minute video here. Pretty cool one, actually. And then we're going to come back for our final discussion. But Mike, thanks so much. And then Mike, also go ahead and post, your link. I think we already did that, but maybe what part. I love the training piece, and I do want to come back to that because I think that's going to be something that partners might be interested in. So okay, all right. Let me go ahead and share my screen again. Put the sound on, right? And okay, all right. So give me 1 second. We're going to pull up here, and what we'll be doing right now is we're going to go ahead and resume slideshow. We're going to get into Ryan Tech. Ryan McMillan, president of Ryan Tech, who's actually on here a couple months ago. They have We Speak Cloud to get notified by them, but they are really awesome with what they do. So let me go ahead and play their video. Hi, good afternoon. This is Sherman Crancer. We've got Ryan McMillan here from Ryan Tech. And, Ryan, we were talking about a crazy cybersecurity story, that happened and that you were involved in. Would you be so kind to kind of just share, like, what the story was, what happened, why they called you, that type of thing?
Yeah, sure. So it started with a phone call, that an end user saw some suspicious activity in their inbox. There was some sent emails that they hadn't sent. So starting there, we looked into, where they came from, if the user sent them and just forgot about it, and started the investigation there. That resulted in us finding, malware on the hardware and a bunch of other various issues as well. But that's where it started.
Now, when you initially kind of got that call, do you think that the folks that were in there, those ne'er-do-wells, the bad actors, were in there for more than, a week, or were they in there for a long time?
Sure. No, they weren't. Because our customer had our solution, Cloud Protect, we were alerted that some suspicious activity was going on, and we were in the process of looking into it when the customer called us. So this was all in real time that this was happening. So the actor hadn't been there for very long, which of course we've seen, when a bad actor has been there for a while, they're able to, take advantage of accounts payable departments, watch billing conversations, all that kind of stuff. So none of that had luckily taken place.
Okay, cool. So what did you guys do, that was maybe different than other people to, remediate this type of situation? What did you guys do exactly?
Sure. So because we have our solution, Cloud Protect, we have a lot of logging and data available to us to look into situations like this and develop remediation plans quickly. But it started with looking at everything that this user account had been doing over the last 30 days or so to identify the issue at hand, which the issue at hand here was Windows 10 that was not enterprise grade and had quite a few security flaws on this user's machine. They just simply hadn't had a chance to upgrade yet. They were a new employee, and that allowed the attacker to gain access to their hardware and get malware, get keyloggers, things like that, and continue infecting the machine even when all the malware and everything was removed.
Okay, and using your Cloud Protect, what were the things that were enabled that basically stopped this person dead in its tracks?
Sure. So initially we had told this customer that they need to be on endpoint, they need to be using Cloud Protect, and they need to go through our security checklist to have that fulfilled to 100%. And these kind of things can't happen. So they were in process of doing that, and it became very much a priority after this. But after implementing Microsoft Endpoint, Cloud Protect fully, conditional access policies, as well as the security configurations we recommend for Microsoft 365, that stopped any future breaches and disallowed this attacker from being able to do anything else.
So that's awesome. And that is really, really fantastic. We're seeing a lot of different, more very sophisticated breaches, right? And
sure.
But also, what I'd like to kind of investigate a little bit is what was either the financial impact that occurred or the potential financial impact that would have occurred if, your Cloud Protect wasn't enabled, or if they just never knew that their system was being breached. I'm kind of curious about that.
Sure. So when a bad actor is able to stay silent, watch the transactions in accounting, we've seen, $50,000, $60,000, $80,000 invoices get approved from a hacker that had just been watching accounting practices over months. Looking at what people typically send, what the invoices look like, what the messaging looks like. With Cloud Protect, they're not able to do that. They're not able to watch traffic. They're not able to figure things out in your accounting platform. So they're not able to send legitimate looking, accounts payable emails. So in this instance, the customer lost no money. In the instances we've seen without Cloud Protect, it's around $50,000 on average.
That's crazy. That's unbelievable. 50,000. I mean, we've seen some crazy ones. Recently, a partner of ours, their Azure portal was compromised, and somebody put bit mining machines, Bitcoin.
Sure.
Yeah, $12,000 in 2 days.
That's a quick.
Yeah, it does, right? Yeah. It is crazy.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a bit more about Cloud Protect and kind of like what it is, how it's set up? I love it because of just the ease of use of it, and I think a lot of people would love to hear kind of like your methodology. I think you're leaders in the industry when it comes to that.
Sure. So the idea behind it is it's breach detection software for small and medium business. Most breach detection solutions out there cost thousands upon thousands of dollars. Our solution focuses on watching the front door to your cloud environment, rather than a lot of solutions that sit on every node of every device that you have, which can get very expensive. So our solution watches all authentication and all front door access to Office 365, Azure, and anything that lives inside your Microsoft environment for suspicious activity.
Awesome. So let me ask you this. What is the size of customer that you think Cloud Protect really helps? I mean, some people might be thinking, is it 2 seats? Is it 1,000 seats? Is it 20,000 seats?
Sure.
What are you finding, and who does it service?
Yeah, sure. So we currently have it deployed with customers of all sizes, as small as 5 users and as high as 10,000 users. But it's really effective for any size company. It's able to grow in price according to the size of your organization. So it always remains affordable based on what kind of protection you need, and it can grow to protect on-prem systems as well as cloud based on the Microsoft solutions you're adopting.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. And I actually tried it, so I'm a user. I was able to enable it in like 5 quick clicks, and it's really been something else. Well, when you've deployed Cloud Protect, can you tell us some things that you've noticed inside of some organizations that just blow your mind? Like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening.
Yeah, sure. So one of the scarier ones that we saw when deploying Cloud Protect is an attacker that had been just watching email traffic for nearly 2 years. They had just been understanding business processes, understanding the accounting department, and they hadn't technically done anything yet, but they were, obviously setting up mail flow rules so that they could track what kind of invoices were going through. And I think they were waiting for a really big invoice to come through, and they were going to hijack it and make their own, endpoint to pay to. So that was one of the scarier ones we caught deploying Cloud Protect.
Hey, Ryan, thank you so much for coming today. How would somebody contact you if they want to learn more about Cloud Protect?
Sure. The best way is to go to our website at wespeakcloud.com. You can also email our sales team, salesnotify@ryantechinc.com.
All right. Let's go ahead and get back to the thing. I want to say thank you very much to Ryan from Ryan Tech. I think some pretty interesting lessons to learn. If I could ask our presenters here to come back on video. One of the things that we first and foremost want to say thank you so much for coming on and providing these insights. Really something else. I guess, one of the questions that I would have, who was breached, that partner? That was us, okay? We got breached, our Azure tenant, because you guys know what we do. We do a lot of hands-on labs. But one of the hands-on labs attendees grabbed the credentials and then found a way to break into the lab and then overnight, raised his credentials, turned into another user, right? Put himself as another user, and then went ahead and deployed bit mining machines. And we had him 2 days in a row, and it was about $12,000 for both of the days. The stupid person, well, he's really brilliant in one way, but then also extremely stupid because we knew who he was because we assigned him that credential, 3 days beforehand. So we knew who he was, and then what we did is we investigated, find out his IP address, right? Kind of did that whole thing, and then next, what we did is then we pinged and we followed the person that he didn't spoof his IP address. So we turn it over and it's being investigated. I think we got him actually, the actual person, but Microsoft is helping us with that. So right now the breach is big. Okay, Microsoft is saying the next one is MSPs. So Mike, what are your thoughts on some of the I want to kind of round this out. Any other maybe last minute statements or something that we can leave with that we can be like, yeah, that's great.
Especially as we're talking with a lot of MSPs. Many MSPs offer awareness training to their clients. I talk to clients that use MSPs and they say, we don't have any awareness training. We get in a conversation with the MSP. They say, we offer awareness training. We have it. It's part of your package. So having access to awareness training and not using it is not a good, effective use of the awareness training. The other scenario I often see is, well, we have awareness training, but we don't use it that much. Well, why have it? And lastly, to round it out is we have awareness training. We do some phishing attacks once in a while, but the executive team, they get tired of seeing the emails, or the IT team is complaining that people are flagging phishing. So we don't, the IT team doesn't look at it. So the awareness training is there for a purpose. It's to educate. You got to do it regularly. From awareness training, I suggest no less than one short 3 to 5 minute video a week. Keep it top of mind, as they say. I would do a phishing attack, run it for 2 weeks every single month. And if people continue to keep clicking, and lastly, it's getting the leadership team to support something like that. The leadership team, especially the CEO, I just had that conversation last week. The CEO can't say, I don't want a strong password. Make my password easy. Let me get in easily. They have to lead. So I actually presented to the board of this client just 2 weeks ago. And instead of doing the normal awareness training that they would expect, I said, I'm going to do something different. I'm going to tell you and show you what I'm going to be teaching your team in a couple of weeks. But for every topic, I put a slide, and I said, through the lens of leadership. And I said, this is what your as a board, as the leadership, this is your responsibility. So I'm going to tell them this, but here's your piece of the responsibility that got their attention. And in every one of those cases, I referenced the NIST standard on what I was talking about to make sure they understood this isn't just me making things up. This is the real deal of what they need to be doing. It got their attention.
Wow, that's amazing. Well, thanks so much for coming. So for the rest of us, we're going to be landing the plane like we always do. We don't go over. We always, want to respect everyone's time. Want to say thank you so much. But next month, please pay attention. We are going to have a partner roundtable discussing the new commerce experience that is affecting all of us, all the partners here. Now Microsoft is raising prices by 20% on March 1st, all M365, and now you have to go to a yearly agreement or a 3-year agreement. You can no longer do month to month. Well, you can do month to month, but you then have to charge the client an additional 20%. So the licensing can go up 40%, believe it or not, if you keep them on there. Number two, also the partner is on the hook, right? For the partner's on the hook if somebody cancels it. So what we want to do is have a really rich discussion right there. But please invite your friends to this, because the more people we get, then we're going to come up and put together some petition, right? We're going to put together kind of an incident response, really, to send back to Microsoft and tell them how it's affecting partners. So next month is huge to come to. So please make sure you register early, but also send that invitation out to whomever that you forward it to somebody, because we want to get a massive response rate that we can send back to Microsoft and say, hey, can we rethink this a little bit? Can we tell you how much this is affecting our business? It's really important. So thanks again, everybody. Really appreciate all your time. To our sponsors, to our guests, Clayton Mock, thank you. Mark Benton, thank you. Mike Battelli, Battistella, sorry, I did it right the first three times. But thank you, Mike. Really appreciate it. Awesome. Have a great afternoon. Happy Halloween. Happy Halloween. Be safe this weekend. And the last thing I want to just say is be kind to people. Everyone's getting too offended too quickly, too often. Let's just tone it all down. Let's just be awesome to people, and then let's make our world a better place. All right. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sherman.